Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this international conference arranged by the Swedish Committee for Afghanistan. After the Taliban takeover, what future awaits Afghanistan? That's what we're going to discuss today. Due to the corona pandemic and ongoing travel restrictions, this is a hybrid conference. Basically means that quite a few of you are here with us in Stockholm, but also quite a few of you will partake online. And we are very happy to see you all and welcome everyone. We're also delighted that despite everything, despite corona, despite restrictions, the conference is actually happening. We are making this happen. So, my name is Görel Espelund. I will be the moderator, and throughout the day you will see me here with the panels and introducing our special guests. Unfortunately, Bengt Ekman, the chair of the Swedish Committee for Afghanistan, has fallen ill. He was supposed to have opened this conference, and instead, to open the conference, I would like to invite the Secretary General of the SCA, Andreas Stefansson, to take the floor, and he will open the conference and also set the scene. So, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, distinguished guests, panelists, dignitaries, friends of Afghanistan, friends of the Afghan people. A very warm welcome to all of you. To those who are here, especially those who have traveled from afar, but also to those who follow us digitally by link, and those who stream the conference. And also special welcome to the Swedish Minister for Development Cooperation, Per Fried. I don't think he has yet arrived though. He will be delivering the keynote speech after the coffee break. And welcome, of course, to the many other distinguished panelists, participants. I will be introducing them more in a few minutes. A war-torn country and impoverished people. A repressive regime with a terrible human rights record. Sky-high maternal mortality. A weak school system with few girls enrolled. Some humanitarian aid, otherwise pretty much isolated from the rest of the world, with only 3 countries recognizing the regime. This underdeveloped and God-forsaken spot in Asia was what met me in the autumn of 2000, my first year with the SCA in northern Afghanistan. At that time, in 2000, the year 2000, messages between our offices within the country had to be kept short. There were no other means of instantly conveying them apart from spelling them out letter by letter in code via communication radios. Documents were sent by courier, quite often on horseback, on roads where the asphalt had since long been turned into rubble by Soviet tanks, Mujahideen bombs, and inexistent maintenance. We shipped salaries to field staff at clinics, hospitals, schools, and water projects in sacks on donkey caravans. The smallest banknote denomination, which barely was worth the paper it was printed on, was a 10,000 note. In the evenings, when my Afghan colleagues and I sat in the light of kerosene lamps, yes, we did not have electricity, played cards after food. If we were lucky, we could enjoy some music on our battery-driven radios if we tuned in an AM station from abroad. The only national FM station you could tune in was Radio Shariat, the only domestic channel that ran exclusively religious programs, alternated with messages and edicts from the regime. Just a year later, the towers in New York fell, and the eyes of the world turned to Afghanistan. The God-forsaken spot in Asia now became the epicenter. Soon the US-led invasion drove the Taliban out of power. Most of the people I socialized with, expressed relief and hope, some even euphoria, over the opportunity that now was given to finally turn a new page in Afghanistan. There was talk of massive aid, akin to a Marshall Plan. Women were now to be recognized as equal citizens in a new Afghanistan. The first new public radio station started playing hits from Bollywood and popular tunes by Ahmed Zahir, alternated with messages from the US, the Amerikais, talking about freedom and democracy. Over the past 20 years, the Afghan people, with massive international support, have built their country, literally from scratch. And despite all the challenges that we are very painfully aware of corruption, state inefficiency, the growing conflict, substantial progress has been made. Roads have been paved, mobile networks have expanded, per capita gross national income has doubled, maternal mortality has been cut by half. The sight of millions of girls and boys making it to school on a daily basis has become normalcy. But now, they stand there again on the streets of Kabul, the Taliban fighters, as the new, old rulers of Afghanistan. But this time, taking control of a much more developed country than when they last ruled. Hardly anyone, not even the Taliban themselves, I think, seem to have been able to predict how fast it would go. And it has been difficult to take in. And in parallel with all the desperate cries from Afghanistan, especially from women, we're also faced with messages from the outside world about frozen aid, about sanctions, about non-recognition, about isolation. To me, it's a strange sense of reversed déjà vu. The recent changes are as profound and faithful as those in 2001, but they are in a diametrically opposite direction. As optimistic as people were then, equally worried they are today. Should everything that has been achieved now be destroyed? Will we come full circle and the country again becoming a destitute and isolated spot in Asia with widespread absolute poverty, displacement, mass migration, and a breeding ground for terror? Or can we put our minds together and join hands with the Afghan people in preventing the ongoing collapse of the economy, livelihoods, public services, state collapse? Yes, the question that is on our minds 24/7 is, what future awaits Afghanistan? What future awaits the Afghan people? I would need some water. SCA normally organizes an international conference every second year, and this year's conference takes place at a very crucial time. It's now close to 3 months since the Taliban took over power in Afghanistan. The short-term effects are visible. The people are at very great risk. UNDP forecasts 97% below the poverty line falling under the poverty line by mid-next year. WFP assesses that the vast majority of the population currently do not have enough food to eat. Millions of kids are at real risk of acute malnutrition. Some 85% of the health facilities have been closed for some 2 months due to lack of funds, salaries, and medicines. A humanitarian catastrophe is unfolding as I speak. The banking system is dysfunctional, trade is almost impossible. The economy will, according to IMF, contract with some 30% during this year. There have been some encouraging signs within, for instance, health sector, where Global Fund, WHO, have been able to get some funding mechanisms for a short period to get the health system restarted. And we're also very grateful that SCA announced today that they're putting up funding so that SCA can resource its health programming over the next year. We run healthcare in Nuristan and Wardak, 2 provinces. Meanwhile, development and humanitarian actors still face great difficulties. And I'm not talking only about the funding mechanisms, which are really important that we put in place, but not least also the in-country liquidity crisis. And this is a very urgent matter that requires joint and bold international action from state actors, donors, UN system, and international banking system. It is an urgent issue. Afghanistan has been a highly aid-dependent country for a long time. The previous main funding mechanism, the World Bank's ARTF, Afghanistan Reconstruction Trust Fund, has stopped working. New ones are being intensively discussed, and UNDP has taken the first step by recently announcing a trust fund focused on poverty reduction, supporting community livelihoods and resilience. This is encouraging, but there's a very clear urgency of getting more funding mechanisms in place to deliver basic social services to the people of Afghanistan and to defend their access to rights. And it is possible. In Myanmar, for instance, Burma, during the previous military regime, a number of donors set up a mechanism that delivered services directly to the people with financial firewalls that did not compromise principles of not channeling funds through the regime. It requires political will, and that we put our heads together. We're very happy today that we have with us Ulrika Moder, the UN Assistant Secretary General and Director of the UNDP External Relations, Karin Jentin, the SCA Director General, and Terje Vettedal, the Country Director of our sister organization, Norwegian Afghanistan Committee, who will together discuss these pressing issues. What can the UN do? What can bilateral donors do? What can NGOs do? And what can we all do together? Not least with regards to getting funding in place, cash on the ground, and programming for delivery and development. We hope to hear about solutions being cooked. Among the greatest achievements during the last 20 years is the progress for women and girls in taking their legitimate part in society, in attaining their human rights, the right to education, right to healthcare, right to participation, work and income, right to participate in politics, business and media. These achievements are now at great risk. What will the Taliban regime commit itself to, and how will it act? What can the international community do to support the rights of women and girls? What can the Afghan people, the Afghan civil society do to defend and promote what has been achieved? We have Jamila Afghani, the Executive Director of Media Afghanistan and President of the Afghan section of the International Women's League for Peace and Freedom. Najwa Alimi, journalist and recipient of the Per Anger Award 2019. And Amin Mail, SCA's Acting Deputy Country Director and Program Director. And they will be discussing these important issues, and I hope we will hear about plans and ideas for action that can be taken with regards to women's rights. How will the Taliban govern? That we still know quite little about. Not much of their policies have been made known or come out very clearly. We have heard the word soon for 3 months, for instance, with regards to the fate of girls on upper secondary education levels. But nevertheless, what can we learn from these 3 months? What trends have we seen, or do we see right now? What can be expected? Internationally well-known expertise, Kate Clark, co-director of the Afghanistan Analyst Network, Anders Fenge, the SCA board member, previous country director of SCA, Stephen Brookins, UNAMA's Special Advisor and Acting Director of Political Affairs, and Andreas von Brandt, the EU Ambassador and Head of Delegation to Afghanistan, will give us their analysis of these questions and prognosis for the future. And finally, how shall the international community relate to the Taliban regime? It depends naturally on what the Taliban regime itself commits to and does, but also on the international community itself, of course. What have we learned from sanction regimes and isolation policies from other countries? How can commitment to policy principles be matched with necessary dialogue and needed pragmatism in, for instance, delivery of the much-needed aid? Ashley Jackson, the co-director of the Center for Study of Armed Groups at ODI, Barnett Rubin, former senior advisor to the Special Representative for Afghanistan and Pakistan at the US State Department, and Thomas Niklasson, the EU Special Envoy for Afghanistan, will be discussing these issues and enlightening us. So I think we can all look forward to a very stimulating discussion today, but also come up with ideas of concrete action and help each other to think, because the issues at stake are very complex. At the end of the day, it's about saving Afghanistan and saving the Afghan people. SCA has been present in Afghanistan for 40 years. We exist solely for the Afghan people, and we will stay on as long as the Afghan people need us. And the international community needs to continue to stay focused on Afghanistan. And I hope this conference can contribute to that focus. Thank you, everybody. Again, a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Andreas. It's a great task we have ahead of us. And just as you said, I hope that these discussions that we're having today will shine light on what is in front of us and also give us some inspiration and maybe hope for the future. We will soon invite our first panel to